My name is Rachel. I'm 43 years old. And what I discovered in my own home, what I learned about the people I trusted most in this world, shattered everything I believed about love, about family, about truth itself. I want you to understand something before I tell you this story. I was a good wife. I was a devoted daughter-in-law. I believed in the sanctity of marriage, in the bonds of family. I believed that when you love someone, when you stand at an altar and promise your life to them, that means something, that it's supposed to mean everything. But what I saw that night, what I uncovered in the months and years that followed, I'll never forget it, not as long as I live. It's burned into my mind like a brand, like a scar that never quite heals. And even now, years later, when I close my eyes, I can still see his face. I can still feel the cold rush of betrayal washing over me like ice water in my veins. Before I continue, before I tell you everything that happened, please, I'm asking you, like this video, subscribe to this channel. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, what country, what city, because I need to know that someone out there is listening. I need to know that my story matters, that my pain wasn't for nothing, that maybe, just maybe, someone else out there will hear this and recognize the warning signs before it's too late for them too. Because that's what this is, really. It's a warning. It's a cautionary tale about trust and deception, about the masks people wear and the secrets they keep. And if my suffering can save even one person from going through what I went through, then maybe it will all have been worth something. So please help me reach others who need to hear this. Like, subscribe, and let me know you're there. Let me know I'm not alone in this darkness. 7 years ago, my life was beautiful. I mean that sincerely. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of when I was a little girl playing with dolls and imagining my future. I lived in a modest but comfortable home in the suburbs with my husband, Daniel. We'd been married for 11 years at that point, and while we weren't rich, we were happy. Or at least, I thought we were happy. God, I really thought we were happy. Daniel worked as a regional sales manager for an electronics company. He traveled sometimes, but never for more than a few days at a time. He'd call me every night when he was away, tell me about his day, ask about mine. We'd laugh about silly things, the neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking, the plot twist in the TV show I was watching, the way my mother had called 3 times in one day just to ask if I'd remembered to water her plants while she was visiting my aunt. Every Sunday morning we'd make pancakes together. That was our tradition. Daniel would man the griddle while I mixed the batter and sliced strawberries. We'd eat on the back patio if the weather was nice, sitting in those cheap plastic chairs we kept meaning to replace with something nicer but never quite got around to. We'd drink coffee, his black, mine with way too much cream and sugar, and we'd talk about our week, our plans, our dreams. He wanted to save up for a boat. Can you imagine? A boat. He'd never been particularly outdoorsy, but he'd gotten this idea in his head that we should spend our weekends on the lake, fishing and swimming and just being together, away from everything. I loved that idea. I loved that he wanted to create these experiences with me, these memories. His sister, Margaret, lived about 2 hours away in the city. She was a successful corporate attorney, brilliant, driven, ambitious in ways that frankly intimidated me sometimes. She drove a Mercedes, wore designer suits, and had this air of confidence that I'd always secretly envied. We weren't particularly close, but we weren't enemies either. We were cordial. We exchanged pleasantries at family gatherings. She'd send a card on our anniversary. I'd send one on her birthday. My relationship with Daniel's mother, Eleanor, was warm. She was a sweet woman, a widow who'd raised Daniel and Margaret on her own after her husband died when the kids were young. She lived in a small apartment in a retirement community, and I'd visit her every Tuesday afternoon. We'd have tea, always Earl Grey, never anything else, and she'd tell me stories about Daniel as a boy, about how he'd been so shy, so sensitive, so kind. He was always bringing home stray animals, she'd say with that soft, nostalgic smile of hers. Birds with broken wings, cats with matted fur. He had such a big heart, my Daniel, such a tender soul. And I believed her, because that was the Daniel I knew too. The man who cried during sad movies, the man who couldn't drive past a homeless person without giving them whatever cash he had in his wallet, the man who'd held me through my father's funeral, who'd stroked my hair and whispered that everything would be okay, that he'd never leave me, that we'd get through anything together. Our life was routine, yes, perhaps even mundane, but it was ours. It was safe. It was predictable in the best possible way. I knew what to expect each day. I knew who I was. I knew who we were. Until one evening in late September, when everything I knew turned out to be a carefully constructed lie. But soon, I started noticing small things that didn't make sense, little inconsistencies, tiny cracks in the perfect facade of our life together. Things so subtle that at first I convinced myself I was imagining them, that I was being paranoid, that I was manufacturing problems where none existed. But those cracks, they were about to split wide open, and when they did, they would swallow my entire world whole. It started with his phone. Daniel had never been secretive about his phone before. It would sit on the kitchen counter while he showered, on the nightstand while he slept, on the coffee table while we watched television. If it rang and he was busy, he'd ask me to answer it. "Can you get that, honey? My hands are full." But suddenly, and I can pinpoint the exact week this changed, the first week of September, he started taking it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the garage when he took out the trash. He'd sleep with it under his pillow. When it would buzz with a notification, he'd snatch it up so quickly, with such urgency, that it made my stomach twist with an anxiety I couldn't quite name. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked one evening as we sat on the couch. His phone had buzzed 3 times in 10 minutes. "Just work stuff," he said, not looking at me, not looking at me. That was the thing that struck me most. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My husband, who had always looked at me with such openness, such warmth, was now staring at the television screen like his life depended on it. "Must be important," I said, trying to keep my tone light, casual. "Yeah, big client. Lots of back and forth." But it was 9 o'clock at night, on a Saturday. Then there were the late nights at the office. Daniel had always been a 9 to 5 guy, home by 6 at the latest. Suddenly, he was working until 8, 9, sometimes 10 o'clock. And when he'd come home, he'd be exhausted, but not the normal tired you get from a long day of work. This was different. He seemed drained in a way that went beyond physical fatigue. He seemed guilty, nervous, on edge. "Rough day?" I'd ask, trying to be supportive. "Yeah, just a lot going on." "Anything you want to talk about?" "No, I'm okay, just tired." And then he'd go straight to the bedroom, bypassing our usual evening ritual of talking about our days, of reconnecting after being apart. He stopped smiling. He stopped really looking at me, really seeing me. When I'd touch his arm, his shoulder, trying to bridge whatever gap was growing between us, he'd stiffen. He'd pull away. Not dramatically, just slightly. Just enough to make it clear he didn't want to be touched. Our Sunday pancake tradition ended. The first week he said he had a headache. The second week he had to catch up on work emails. The third week he didn't even offer an excuse. He just stayed in bed until noon, claiming he needed sleep. I tried talking to my best friend Lisa about it. I think something's wrong with Daniel, I told her over coffee one afternoon. Wrong how? I don't know, he's just different, distant, like he's somewhere else even when he's right in front of me. Lisa gave me that look, the sympathetic but slightly dismissive look that people give you when they think you're overreacting. Rachel, all marriages go through phases. Maybe he's stressed about work. Maybe you guys just need a vacation or something. Don't create problems that aren't there. But I wasn't creating problems. I could feel it in my bones, in my gut, in every instinct I had. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday. Daniel said he had to work late again. A client dinner that would probably run until 10 or so. I said okay. I made myself dinner alone, watched a mindless reality show, tried not to think about the growing chasm between us. Around 9:30, I decided to take a bath. I went to get my phone from the bedroom to play some music, and that's when I saw Daniel's iPad on the nightstand. He must have forgotten it in his rush to leave that morning. I wouldn't have thought twice about it normally, but it was sitting there, and it was connected to the same cloud account as his phone, and before I could talk myself out of it, before I could remind myself that married people are supposed to trust each other, I picked it up. It was unlocked. And there, right there on the screen, was a text message notification from someone named M. Can't wait to see you tonight. I've missed you so much. My hands started shaking. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, feel it in my throat. I opened the messages, and what I saw, what I read in those messages between my husband and this M person, it made my heart stop. It made my entire body go cold. It made me feel like I was falling through the floor, through the earth, through reality itself. Until one night I saw something that made my heart stop. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where we'd slept together for 11 years, where we'd made love, where we'd comforted each other through nightmares and illness and grief, and I scrolled through months of messages between Daniel and M. My first instinct wasn't anger, it was denial, pure, desperate, all-consuming denial. This couldn't be what it looked like. There had to be another explanation. Maybe M was a colleague. Maybe these messages were being taken out of context. Maybe Daniel had a perfectly reasonable explanation for why someone was texting him things like, I can't stop thinking about last night, and you make me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten. I must have read through those messages 10 times, 20 times, each time trying to find some alternative interpretation. Some way to make this not be what my breaking heart knew it was. But there was no other way to interpret messages like I love you and I wish we didn't have to hide this. And soon we won't have to pretend anymore. My husband, my kind, sensitive, loyal husband, was having an affair. I thought I would throw up. I actually ran to the bathroom, knelt in front of the toilet, waited for my body to physically reject this information the way my mind was trying to. But nothing came. Just dry heaves. Just tears. Just this animal sound of pain coming from somewhere deep inside me that I didn't even recognize as my own voice. How long had this been going on? Who was M? Where did they meet? How did this happen? Why did this happen? What had I done wrong? That's where my mind went immediately, to self-blame. I started cataloging my failures as a wife. Maybe I'd let myself go. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough, attentive enough, pretty enough, interesting enough. Maybe I'd been too focused on my own life, my own job at the library, my own friendships. Maybe I'd neglected him. Maybe I'd driven him into someone else's arms. I sat on that bathroom floor for I don't know how long, an hour, maybe two, just trying to process, trying to breathe, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I confront him immediately? Should I wait? Should I gather more evidence? Should I talk to a lawyer? Should I tell his mother? Oh, God. Eleanor. Sweet, kind Eleanor, who thought her son was perfect, who'd raised him to be a good man, who would be devastated to know what he'd become. How could I tell her? How could I break her heart like that? I finally pulled myself together enough to wash my face, to try to make myself look normal. Daniel would be home soon, and I needed to decide how to handle this. I needed a plan. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were swollen and red. Her face was pale, almost gray. She looked 10 years older than she had that morning. She looked broken. I heard the garage door open. Daniel was home. I walked out of the bathroom, down the hallway, into the kitchen where he was taking off his jacket. "Hey," he said, giving me that same distant smile he'd been giving me for weeks. "How was your evening?" I opened my mouth to confront him, to demand the truth, to scream and cry and make him explain how he could do this to me, to us, to our marriage. But what came out was, "Fine. How was your dinner?" "Long," he said. "I'm exhausted. I think I'm going to head straight to bed." And he did. He walked right past me, kissed the top of my head, a perfunctory gesture, nothing more, and went to our bedroom. I stood in the kitchen alone, hating myself for my cowardice, for my inability to confront him, for my desperate, pathetic hope that maybe if I just ignored this, it would go away, that maybe I'd misunderstood, that maybe tomorrow I'd wake up and this would all have been a bad dream. But the next morning, the evidence was right in front of me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore, because when Daniel left for work, he forgot his iPad again, and this time there was a new message from M. "Last night was perfect. I love you so much. Only 127 more days until we can be together forever." 127 days. They were counting down. They had a plan. They were going to leave. He was going to leave me in 127 days. That's when the denial shattered. That's when the full weight of this betrayal crashed down on me like a building collapsing. That's when I finally let myself feel the rage. I called in sick to work. I couldn't go to the library and smile at patrons and check out books and pretend everything was normal when my entire world was imploding. I needed answers. I needed to know who M was. I needed to know the full extent of this betrayal. I spent that morning going through every device in the house that Daniel had ever used. His laptop, his old phone that he kept in a drawer, every cloud account, every email address, every social media profile. What I found made everything so much worse. M wasn't just some random woman he'd met at a bar. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated. This was planned. This had been going on for almost a year, 11 months to be exact, since the previous October, nearly a year of lying to my face, a year of I love yous that meant nothing, a year of sleeping beside me at night and then texting her about how much he wished he was with her instead. I found photos, not explicit ones, thank God, but pictures of them together. At restaurants I'd never been to, on hiking trails I'd never walked, on a beach somewhere with palm trees and white sand that definitely wasn't anywhere near our landlocked Midwestern town. He'd taken her on trips, while I'd thought he was at sales conferences, at client meetings, at training seminars. He'd been with her, building a life with her, making memories with her, planning a future with her. The photos were carefully cropped. You couldn't see her face clearly in any of them, just her hair, her hand, her silhouette, almost like he knew he might get caught and wanted to maintain some level of deniability. but it was the financial records that really broke me. I'd always trusted Daniel with our money. He handled the bills, the investments, the savings. I worked part-time at the library and contributed my paycheck to our household account, but he managed everything. I'd never had a reason not to trust him with that. What an idiot I'd been. He'd opened a separate credit card that I didn't know about. He'd been siphoning money from our savings account, small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums. In total, he'd taken almost $30,000, our emergency fund, the money we'd been saving to replace the roof. The money I'd gotten from my father's life insurance policy when he died. He'd stolen from me. He'd stolen my inheritance to fund his affair. I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like the walls of our house were closing in on me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't process the magnitude of his betrayal. I needed more information. I needed to know who this woman was. I needed to understand how this had happened. So I did something I never thought I'd do. Something that, in my old life, my life from just 48 hours ago, I would have considered crazy, paranoid, obsessive. I installed a tracking app on his phone. I waited until he came home that evening, until he went to take a shower. I took his phone from the kitchen counter, installed the app, hid it in a folder of other apps so he wouldn't notice, and put the phone back exactly where he'd left it. My hands were shaking the entire time. My heart was pounding. I felt like a criminal, but I also felt justified. He'd forfeited his right to privacy the moment he'd started lying to me. I also set up a hidden camera in our bedroom, one of those nanny cams that looks like a phone charger. I wanted to see if he'd bring her to our home, to our bed. I needed to know just how deep this disrespect went. And then I waited. That night, I lay in bed next to him, my body rigid with tension, my mind racing with a million terrible scenarios. He fell asleep within minutes, like he didn't have a care in the world, like he wasn't destroying his wife's life, like his conscience was clear. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and I thought about how many nights I'd done this exact thing, lay beside him, felt safe and loved and content. How many times I'd reached over and taken his hand, or curled up against him, or whispered that I loved him before drifting off to sleep. All of it had been a lie. All of it had been meaningless. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the next. I just watched the tracking app, waiting to see where he would go, who he would see, when he would slip up and reveal the full truth. That night, I pressed record and waited. It took 3 days. 3 days of monitoring his every move, of checking the tracking app obsessively, of barely eating, barely sleeping, barely functioning. 3 days of going through the motions of normal life while internally I was screaming. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel told me he had to go into the office to catch up on some paperwork. On a Saturday? I asked, trying to sound casual rather than accusatory. Yeah, it's the only time I can get some quiet to focus. I'll be back by dinner. Okay, I said. See you later. I watched him leave, watched him get in his car, back out of the driveway, wave at me through the window like everything was perfectly normal. And then I opened the tracking app. He didn't go to his office. He drove to an apartment complex on the east side of town. One of those newer, upscale buildings with a doorman and underground parking. The kind of place that costs 3 times what our mortgage cost. He parked. The little blue dot on my phone screen stopped moving, and he stayed there. For hours. I sat on our couch, staring at that little blue dot, feeling like I was watching my marriage die in real time, feeling like I was disappearing, becoming less real with every minute that passed. Around 5 o'clock, I made a decision. I got in my car, and I drove to that apartment building. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. Confront him? confront her? Make a scene? I wasn't thinking clearly. I was running on pure emotion, rage and grief and betrayal all mixed together into this toxic cocktail that propelled me forward, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to turn around, to go home, to handle this differently. But I didn't turn around. I drove straight there, parked across the street, and I waited. At 6:15, Daniel emerged from the building. He wasn't alone. She was beautiful. That was the first thought I had, this horrible, self-destructive thought that of course she was beautiful. Tall and slim with long dark hair, wearing yoga pants and an expensive-looking jacket. Young, younger than me by at least 10 years. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back, her hand on his arm. And Daniel, my husband, the man I'd promised to love until death, he looked at her the way he used to look at me, years ago, back when we were first dating. That look of complete adoration, of total focus, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. He kissed her, right there on the sidewalk, in front of God and everyone. He kissed her. Not a peck. A real kiss. The kind of kiss that told me everything I needed to know about how deep his feelings for her went. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I was seeing. They separated, and she went back into the building. He got in his car and drove away, presumably heading home to me to pretend everything was fine, to lie to my face some more. I sat in my car for another 30 minutes, maybe longer. People walked past, cars drove by, the sun started to set, and I just sat there, frozen, my entire world shattered into pieces at my feet. I froze. My whole world collapsed in a single frame. But what happened next was even worse. Because when I finally drove home, when I finally walked back into our house and saw Daniel in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing had happened, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't keep this inside. "Who is she?" I said. He turned around, spatula in hand, confusion on his face. "What?" "The woman you were with today, at the apartment on the east side. Who is she?" The color drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "I know everything, Daniel. I've read your messages. I know about the money. I know you've been planning to leave me. So just tell me the truth. Who is she?" He set the spatula down slowly. His hands were shaking. "Rachel, Who is she?" And that's when he said the 4 words that broke me completely. "She's your physical therapist." I'd had a car accident 2 years prior. Nothing major, just some whiplash and back pain. Daniel had been so supportive during my recovery, had driven me to all my appointments, had found me the best physical therapist in town. Melissa. Her name was Melissa. M wasn't some stranger. She wasn't someone he'd met at a bar or on a business trip. She was someone I'd trusted. Someone I'd thanked for helping me. Someone who touched my body, helped me heal, smiled at me, and asked about my day while secretly sleeping with my husband. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. This horrible, hysterical laugh that bubbled up from somewhere dark and broken inside me. Because it was so absurd, so cruelly, viciously absurd. "You're sleeping with my physical therapist," I said. "The woman who was supposed to help me. And you brought me to her. You introduced us. You sat in the waiting room while she worked on me, and the whole time you were—" I couldn't finish. I just shook my head. "Rachel, I'm sorry," he said. "I never meant for this to happen. It just... Get out." "What?" "Get out of my house. Rachel, please, let's talk about this. Get out!" I screamed it. I screamed it so loud my throat hurt. So loud the neighbors probably heard. Get out, or I swear to God I will call the police and tell them you've been stealing from me. Because you have been. Thousands of dollars from our account. From my father's insurance money. So get out and don't come back. He stood there for a long moment, looking at me like he didn't recognize me. And then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and his keys, and he left. I sank to the kitchen floor and I wept. I wept for my marriage, for my trust, for my future. I wept for the woman I'd been just days ago, naive and trusting and happy in her ignorance. That woman was gone. She died the moment I'd read those text messages, and I had no idea who I was supposed to be now. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and painful conversations. I filed for divorce immediately. I froze all our joint accounts. I changed the locks on the house. I did everything I was supposed to do, everything the lawyer told me to do, moving through each day like a robot following programming. Daniel tried calling, texting. He showed up at the house a few times, begging to talk, to explain. I refused. There was nothing he could say that would change what he'd done. Nothing he could say that would make this hurt less. His mother called me, crying. "Rachel, sweetheart, please," Eleanor said. "I don't understand what happened. Daniel won't tell me anything except that you threw him out. Can we talk?" I loved Eleanor. I really did, but I couldn't bear to tell her the truth. I couldn't bear to destroy her image of her son. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," I said. "I can't talk about it right now. I can't." "Did he hurt you?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, he did." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm so sorry, dear. Whatever he did, I'm so sorry." I told her I'd call her when I was ready to talk. We hung up, and I cried for another hour. Because I'd lost more than just my husband. I'd lost my whole extended family. Eleanor, Daniel's aunt and uncle, his cousins who I'd gotten close to over the years. They'd all choose him, of course. Blood is thicker than water. I'd become the villain in this story somehow, the bitter ex-wife who broke up the family. My friends rallied around me. Lisa came over every day after work, bringing food and wine and terrible rom-coms to watch. My coworkers at the library were understanding when I needed to take time off. My mother flew in from Florida and stayed for 2 weeks, cleaning and cooking and just being there. But I still felt completely alone. I went back to the physical therapy office. Not for treatment, I'd healed long ago, but because I needed to confront Melissa. I needed to look her in the eye and ask her why she'd done this, why she'd helped him destroy me. The receptionist told me Melissa no longer worked there. "She quit?" I asked. "About 2 weeks ago, gave her notice and left." Of course she did. She and Daniel were probably together now, starting their new life, counting down those days until they could be together forever without having to hide. I thought about trying to find her, about showing up at her apartment, the apartment I now knew the address of thanks to the tracking app. But what would be the point? What could I possibly say or do that would make any of this better? So, I did nothing. I just went home and tried to piece my life back together. The divorce proceeded quickly. Daniel didn't contest anything. He agreed to give me the house, to pay back the money he'd stolen, to walk away with just his personal belongings and his car. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he just wanted to be done with me as quickly as possible so he could fully commit to his new relationship. I didn't care about his motivations. I just wanted him gone from my life completely. 3 months after I kicked him out, the divorce was finalized. I was single for the first time in 13 years, free, untethered, and absolutely terrified, because I had no idea how to be alone. I had no idea who I was without Daniel. My entire adult life had been built around being his wife, being part of a couple, being one half of us. Now there was only me, just me, and I felt like a stranger to myself. I started therapy. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Morrison, helped me work through the betrayal, the trust issues, the deep well of anger that threatened to consume me. "You're grieving," she told me. "Not just the end of your marriage, but the death of the future you'd imagined. That's a real loss. You're allowed to mourn it." So I did. I mourned. I raged. I cried. I threw away everything in the house that reminded me of Daniel. Photos, gifts, even furniture we'd picked out together. I painted the walls different colors. I rearranged everything. I tried to make the house feel like mine instead of ours. Slowly, painfully, I started to heal. Or at least I started to function again. I went back to work full time. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I took up new hobbies, pottery classes, book clubs, hiking groups. I was trying to build a new life, a new identity. I thought I was doing okay. I really did. And then, almost 2 years after I'd kicked Daniel out, something happened that would unravel everything all over again. I thought it was over, but I was wrong. It was a Thursday afternoon in early spring. I was working at the library, helping a patron find a book about gardening, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me step away from the desk and take the call. "Hello? Is this Rachel Henderson?" A woman's voice. Professional, formal. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Henderson, my name is Detective Sarah Chen with the County Sheriff's Office. I need to speak with you about your ex-husband, Daniel Henderson." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay? Did something happen? Could you come down to the station? I'd rather discuss this in person." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a small, windowless interview room at the police station, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, my heart pounding. Detective Chen sat across from me. She was younger than I expected, probably in her mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Ms. Henderson, when was the last time you had contact with your ex-husband?" "About 2 years ago, right after our divorce was finalized." "Why? What's this about?" She studied me for a moment. "Daniel Henderson has been missing for 3 weeks." I blinked. "Missing?" His girlfriend, Melissa Taylor, filed a report. She said he left for a business trip to Chicago and never came home, never checked into his hotel. His credit cards haven't been used. His phone's been off. It's like he just vanished. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Karma, I thought. Part of me felt horrified. And part of me felt nothing at all. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "But I don't understand why you're telling me this. I haven't spoken to Daniel in 2 years. We're talking to everyone who knew him, trying to piece together his movements, his state of mind, any possible explanations." She paused. "Melissa mentioned that your divorce was contentious, that there was infidelity involved." "Yes." "She implied that you might have harbored ill will toward Daniel." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Is she suggesting I had something to do with his disappearance? I haven't even thought about him in months, let alone—" I shook my head. I was angry at him, yes. What he did to me was cruel and devastating, but I'd moved on. I was done with him. "Where were you 3 weeks ago? Thursday, March 15th? So I was a suspect. Wonderful. "I was at work. I work at the public library. I can give you my supervisor's contact information, and I'm sure there are time cards or security footage or whatever you need." Detective Chen took down the information. She asked me a few more questions about Daniel's habits, his mental state during our marriage, whether he'd ever mentioned wanting to disappear or start over somewhere. No, I said. He wasn't that kind of person. He was methodical, predictable. He wouldn't just vanish without a plan. Unless he had a plan I didn't know about. Unless this was part of some scheme I couldn't see. After an hour, Detective Chen let me go, telling me not to leave town and to contact her if I thought of anything relevant. I drove home in a daze. Daniel was missing. Missing. The man I'd once loved, once trusted, once promised my life to, he was just gone. And nobody knew where he was or why he'd disappeared. Over the next few weeks, the story made the local news. Search parties were organized. Posters with Daniel's face went up around town. His mother called me, hysterical, begging me to help find him. "Please, Rachel," Eleanor sobbed. "I know things ended badly between you two, but he's still my son. He was your husband. Please, if you know anything." "I don't," I told her honestly. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I really don't know anything." I felt hollow, numb, like I was watching all of this happen to someone else. The investigation continued. Police searched Daniel's apartment, his car, his workplace. They interviewed Melissa at length. They questioned his friends, his colleagues, even me a second time. But they found nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play, no clear explanation. Daniel Henderson had simply disappeared from the face of the earth. Eventually, the news coverage died down. The search parties stopped. Life moved on, the way it always does, even in the face of tragedy and mystery. Melissa moved away, I heard through the grapevine. Couldn't handle living in the same town where her boyfriend had vanished without a trace. Eleanor declined rapidly. The stress and grief aged her years in months. She moved into assisted living, too frail to care for herself anymore. And I went back to my quiet life, my small house, my job at the library, my pottery classes and book clubs. But Daniel's disappearance haunted me, not because I missed him or wanted him back, but because there were no answers, no closure, no ending to this awful story. Until one day, almost 3 years after Daniel vanished, everything changed. And just when I thought life was returning to normal, something unexpected happened. It was a Saturday morning. I was in my garden, planting tomatoes and basil, dirt under my fingernails, sun warm on my back. I'd found peace in gardening over the past year. There was something meditative about it. Something healing about nurturing living things and watching them grow. I heard a car pull up in front of my house. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and turned to see who it was. A luxury car, a sleek black BMW. It gleamed in the sunlight, completely out of place in my modest suburban neighborhood. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped Margaret, Daniel's sister, the successful corporate attorney with the designer suits and the confident air. I hadn't seen her since before the divorce, hadn't spoken to her since a brief, awkward phone call right after Daniel left, where she'd told me she was staying out of it. She was dressed more casually than usual, jeans, a simple blouse, but she still had that aura of wealth and power about her. She walked up my driveway with purpose, her eyes locked on mine. "Rachel," she said. "Margaret." I crossed my arms, defensive. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you. It's about Daniel." My heart started pounding. "Did they find him? Is he—" "Get in the car," she said. "Please, I can't explain here. Just trust me. Get in the car." Everything in me was screaming not to. Margaret and I weren't friends. We'd never been close. I had no reason to trust her, no reason to think this was anything other than some kind of trap or trick. But something in her eyes, some desperation, some urgency, made me nod. "Give me 5 minutes to clean up," I said. I went inside, washed my hands, grabbed my purse and phone, left a note for my neighbor in case I didn't come back, which in retrospect seemed dramatic but felt prudent at the time, and walked back out to Margaret's car. She was waiting, engine running. I got in the passenger seat. The interior smelled like leather and expensive perfume. "Where are we going?" I asked as she pulled away from the curb. "Somewhere we can talk privately," she said. "Somewhere safe." "Margaret, you're scaring me. What's going on?" She glanced at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw fear in her eyes. Real, genuine fear. "Daniel's alive," she said quietly. I couldn't breathe. "What?" "He's alive, and he's in trouble, and you're the only person who can help him." 10. Closing call to action. Connection. We drove for almost an hour. Margaret wouldn't tell me where we were going or explain anything further, saying only that she needed to show me something, that I needed to see it with my own eyes to believe it. We ended up at a small cabin in the woods, the kind of place hunters use during deer season. Isolated, completely off the grid. Margaret parked and turned off the engine. "He's inside," she said. "Daniel?" "Yes?" "Why is he hiding in a cabin in the woods? Why did he disappear?" "Margaret, what the hell is going on?" She took a deep breath. 5 years ago, Daniel witnessed something at his company. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. He tried to report it to HR, to management, but the people involved were powerful. They threatened him, told him if he went to the authorities, they'd make sure he went down with them. They had evidence, fabricated evidence, that would make it look like he was the one behind the crimes. I stared at her. What? He panicked. He didn't know what to do. So he started planning an exit strategy, a way to disappear if things got too dangerous. That's why he met Melissa. She wasn't really a physical therapist. She was working for the company, sent to keep tabs on him, to make sure he stayed quiet. My head was spinning. "You're telling me their whole relationship was fake? She was spying on him?" "I don't know if the relationship was entirely fake. I think real feelings developed, but yes, initially she was there to monitor him." Margaret's hands were gripping the steering wheel even though we were parked. Eventually, the threats escalated. Daniel realized he had to disappear or risk going to prison, or worse. So he staged his disappearance, made it look like he'd vanished without a trace. Where has he been all this time? Here, living off the grid. I've been helping him, bringing him supplies, keeping him updated on the investigation. Our mother doesn't know. No one knows except me. And now you. Why are you telling me this? Why bring me here? Margaret finally looked at me. Because he needs your help. The people he was running from, they've been arrested. The FBI finally built a case against them. But there's a problem. Some of the charges they're facing include Daniel's disappearance. They're trying to claim they had nothing to do with it, that maybe Daniel fled because he was guilty of the crimes they're accused of. So he needs to come forward. Yes, but he's terrified of facing the police, of facing everyone, of facing you. She paused. He knows what he did to you was unforgivable. The affair, the lies, the way he left. He's been eaten alive by guilt for 5 years. But he was trying to protect you. If those people had known you had any information, they would have come after you too. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, confusion, relief that he wasn't dead, rage that he'd let us all think he was. "I need to see him," I said. We got out of the car and walked to the cabin. Margaret knocked on the door in a specific pattern, some kind of code, I assumed. The door opened, and there was Daniel. He looked different. Older, he'd grown a beard. His hair was longer and graying at the temples. He'd lost weight, but it was unmistakably him. "Rachel," he whispered. I didn't know what to say, didn't know where to even start. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for everything I did to you." And standing there, looking at this man who'd been my husband, who'd betrayed me, who'd let me believe he was dead for 3 years, I realized something. I was done being angry. I was done letting him take up space in my heart, in my head, in my life. "I forgive you," I said, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. What happened after that is complicated. Daniel came forward. There were trials and testimony and media coverage. The truth came out, all of it. The corruption, the threats, his staged disappearance, even the affair and how Melissa had been manipulating both of us. Melissa was arrested as an accessory. The executives who'd threatened Daniel went to prison. Daniel was cleared of any wrongdoing and eventually went into witness protection for a while. His mother, Eleanor, was able to see him before she passed away a year later. That gave me some peace, knowing she got to hold her son one last time, knowing she didn't die thinking he was gone forever. As for me and Daniel, we didn't get back together. Too much had happened. Too much trust had been broken. But we found a kind of peace with each other. Forgiveness, if not reconciliation. I learned something through all of this. Something I want to share with anyone who's listening. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts. Trust that little voice in your head that says something isn't right. Don't let people convince you you're crazy or paranoid or imagining things. I ignored my instincts for too long. I let Daniel gaslight me, let my friends dismiss my concerns, let my fear of being wrong keep me from seeking the truth. Never again. Your intuition is there for a reason. It's trying to protect you. Listen to it. And if you're going through something similar, if you're in a relationship where you feel lied to, betrayed, manipulated, please know that you're not alone, that it's not your fault, that you deserve better, you deserve honesty, you deserve respect, you deserve a love that doesn't require you to ignore your own instincts. Don't settle for less. It took me years to rebuild my life, to find myself again, to learn to trust. But I did it. And if I can do it, so can you. You are stronger than you think. You are more resilient than you know. And you deserve a life filled with truth, not lies. If this story touched your heart, if it resonated with you in any way, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Are you in New York at midnight, unable to sleep? In London, having your morning coffee? In Tokyo, winding down your evening? I want to know you're out there. I want to know my story reached you, because sharing our pain, our struggles, our truth, that's how we heal. That's how we help others heal too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are not alone. Never, ever alone.